It still had my other headphones. Oh, here we are. Yay, we are back in action. So everyone, thank you for your patience. The streaming software is, I'm not going to swear, but it's a real nightmare. I would call it something else if we weren't doing a YouTube live. It's a real piece of work. So here we are. And Priya, I hope you're well.
I'm great. How are you, Eva?
I'm good, and I cannot wait to have a second monitor again because I literally just have to run this off a little MacBook Air all on one thing. And it's just not possible to, because of the delay, I can't wait, if I have a second device to watch the video, I also have this whole 1 minute delay until I see what's happening, so that's not really going to be any use. But hopefully, I'll just quickly check. Okay, they can hear us. We can go ahead and let's look at George's viz. We're looking at cash crops this week. Okay, his viz is no longer there. We'll move on to the next one. If people change the links, that's too bad. We'll go move on to Matthias. And this is very large. Let me find the full screen. Hopefully that shrinks it. Nope. Let me make this a bit smaller. And Priya, what did you think of this week's data set before we dive into this viz?
Yeah, so there's actually quite a lot to it. So I guess you could kind of do a lot of different things. So I saw a lot of different chart choices. So yeah, I feel like there was room for exploration with this one. What do you think?
I think there was a lot, and admittedly, I mean, I've now given myself the target of completing my visits on Sundays because with my new job, I just don't really have the time to do it during the week, and I'm just going to stick to simple things because I think my value is more in providing feedback. But I agree, there's potential to do actually a lot with this data set, or to do very little, depending on what people want to do. So, what's your thoughts on Matthias's viz?
Yeah, so this is the first time I've seen it, so I'm just taking a look. I like how you can toggle between the different areas. That's nice. So these are kind of like the main categories of the crops, I guess, on the left-hand side, or
I think so, because there was, I think, 40 or so in the data set, so it's probably just the main ones, probably top 10.
Yeah, so I like how we can kind of see like the area harvested, production and yield all separated like that. The line charts, I feel like you can't really tell much from them. What do you think? It's kind of...
I find them a bit distracting because they interrupt the viz. I think if it was just a bar chart, it would be really nice natural flow from left to right. But I find them a bit, disruptive because they just break up the view for me, and they're not really labeled as to what they show. Because so in the title it says 1961 to 2019. I'm guessing the bar chart is the latest year, or is it the total? I'm not sure. It must be the total over time, which doesn't really make much sense because you harvest probably the majority of area that's harvested is harvested every year, or whatever the intervals are for the crop. So it's not like it's a cumulative thing. It's like year after year you harvest a certain amount.
It looks very clean though. Maybe just not having those spark lines there and just having the bars and then a year filter.
Yeah.
Maybe.
That could be a good idea. Yeah.
But I like the colours and it looks very clean.
Absolutely. And sorry, I'm just very momentarily distracted. I'm just trying to get onto the live stream on another computer so I can also see the chat, because at the moment I can't. But yeah, I agree. It's a really clean look. I'm just not sold on the spark lines. Plus, we have, I mean, the axes, they're all very different from another because they're different units. So they don't have to be fixed. But I guess what's confusing is that the numbers, I still try to relate them to one another, but then they're not really relatable, I guess. So yeah, maybe just something to think about, how to resolve that. But let's move on to our next viz, and that comes from Trina. And I thought it was interesting that she had included a pie chart. And we'll reset that. Okay. And I think green was quite a prominent color this week for obvious reasons.
My viz as well had green.
Yeah.
To be honest, I don't mind pie charts when there's only two kind of segments to it.
Mm-hmm.
So that doesn't bother me. For some reason, I prefer a donut chart. I don't really know why. I just think it looks a bit better. I mean, I like how the top four have been highlighted in green because that's the same as the title, so that's very consistent.
Mm-hmm.
I like how you can filter between the different areas and time ranges, parameter as well to highlight the top.
Yeah.
It seems like it's more of an exploratory viz, maybe.
Yeah. Fair point.
What do you think?
Yeah, because you've got quite a few filters. I don't know if I would change the. I mean, I wouldn't add all of. At the moment, it's adding up, 50 or so years. I don't think that makes sense. I mean, why would you add up 50 years of crops? That doesn't really tell you anything about how it changed over time. It's a bit like, I don't know, adding up. To me, okay, so this is at least for me, this is a comparison that makes sense. Looking at your salary. Now, if you say, okay, this is how much you earn, and maybe this is how much your partner earns or your colleagues earn, you wouldn't say how much they earned over 10 years. You would only ever look at the annual salary, or maybe even monthly if you're a German, and you would compare that, between roles, between levels of seniority, and then you would look at your salary over time, how it's changed. But you wouldn't say, I've earned, I don't know, 5 million over the course of 30 years of working. Like that just isn't really a metric that makes sense, I guess, or helps people. So I wouldn't add those up because, like these are 176 billion tons, but also adding up crops, like the 4 crops. I mean, that's just not something that helps, I guess. So, yeah.
That makes sense. How about just comparing to the previous year? Do you think that would work better? Or
yeah, I think the previous year, and I mean, I'm not sure what the purpose of the pie chart is.
Yeah.
I mean, it says the top 4, but then, okay, so if I go to the top 11, just kind of randomly, that's 3/4 of the production. But I don't know if that's the same year after year or because this is all the years combined. And I just don't quite understand what the viz is trying to do.
Yeah, maybe just narrowing down that focus a bit more.
Yeah.
Might help.
Okay. So I think that, design is fine. It's just that the analysis doesn't really make sense to me. So yeah, I changed that. Now we have revealed the data, and I thought this was a really interesting approach with the really small tree maps.
I don't think I've seen that before.
I hadn't thought to do it that way. So I'm keen for us to take this part. Oh my goodness, this is a huge viz.
Oh wow, I just scrolled down. I didn't realize it was so big.
And maybe for those who are new to Make Up a Monday, please don't think you have to create a massive viz every year. Like it's absolutely fine to just do a chart, like a single chart. You don't have to create a dashboard. You don't have to do an Iron Viz level kind of, presentation or dashboard every year. So, every week. Okay, so what we eat and how it grows. My first question would be, what's meant by how it grows? Because to me, how it grows is something like this grows in water and this grows, I don't know, in a greenhouse and this grows organically, whatever it is. I don't know what's meant by how it grows. It's maybe more how much of it we grow or something like that. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, so I'm just trying to kind of understand the kind of second part of it with the area charts, not the small multiples, but the part before that. So it's just broken down by the areas. And there's quite a lot of things in this viz. I almost feel like you don't need all of this. You could just have one of those things.
Yeah.
to just kind of,
I think,
like you said, you don't have to put so much in a viz.
yeah, it's a bit overkill, and Tableau Public just does random refreshes on me. So, because, when you look at the first viz, so we see where things are grown, and we see area harvested, but then also below we see area harvested so this is over time for the different regions. So if I change it to production, and also this is a big data set, so you will be causing it to go slow in Tableau Public by having everything in there, and then having all those different crops. Quite frankly, I'm never going to read all of that. I'm not even going to read the titles, let alone actually look at the data, because what I would like from a viz is it shows me what I should look at rather than showing me everything and making me do the work. Like, I'm just not interested in having to work through, I don't know, 40 or 50, 60, it's probably more than that, different crops and interpreting every single one on my own. Why look at all of them and, like, there are 5 highlighted, maybe the 5 should be the story, not the rest.
Yeah, so just focusing on those 5, but then just, it doesn't have to be the small multiples, I guess, just those. But I do think it's interesting about the tree map on the map. I've never seen that before.
Yeah.
I thought that was interesting, but I think just focusing on those 5, like you said, as the main focal point would be good.
Yeah, because also one thing, I'm guessing those are the 5 that are, is it the area harvested? Because what I don't understand is they're not the 5 biggest in any of the regions. So I don't know why those 5 were chosen, I suppose. Maybe, yeah, I don't know. Okay, let's move on in the interest of time. Next we have Severio, and he's created a viz about tea or coffee.
It looks very clean. I like the design of it. Just one thing, the title is missing an E at the end.
It should be coffee with 2 E's.
But it looks fine in the actual subtitle. There's 2 E's, so that's good.
And it says around the 4 continent, so that should have an S, but there are actually 5. So these things make me immediately doubt the credibility of the analysis, because these are small things, but if you can't get the spelling and the title right, or the number, like when there's 5 things in the viz and you say there's 4, I'm like, okay, has that person done proper checking of their work? That would be, I guess, my first comment there.
And I guess maybe do you think it's a bit difficult to compare tea and coffee on these area charts?
It is, because the bottom area, so the tea, the kind of turquoisey one, that determines the shape of coffee. So
maybe just lines.
Yeah, I was just about to say lines would be easier.
But I do like how it's color coded in the title, and it matches with the chart. I just think, just changing them to lines and just checking for the spelling or typos and stuff would be good.
Absolutely, and I'm guessing this is ordered like in terms of the yields over time. So Oceania, I'm surprised, but I'm guessing there might be, like, Indonesia is probably could be part of Oceania instead of Asia. I'm not sure. I would have expected Asia to be at the top when it comes to tea, at least. But yeah, and then Africa to be higher, and the Americas for coffee. So I'm not sure. What the sort order is. But I think, the design is great, but the content needs a bit of work. Okay. Then we have Huang. So somebody commented, for some people, English is not their first language. I agree, because it's also not my first language. But if you get the word right in one part of the viz and not right in the other, like, these are things that should be checked. And I know Tableau doesn't have spell check, but I would expect that people are also expected in their work to get things right. And, it's something good to work on as well. Okay. So we have packed bubbles. And I'm curious to hear what you think of the use of packed bubbles for that data set.
I didn't see this before, so I'm just reading it to see what it's actually about.
So again, they sum up the cash crops for, how many years are we looking at? I can't even do the maths, but too many. Like 60, almost 60 years. Why? I just don't understand. Am I missing something, genuinely?
Yeah, so maybe it's better to just focus on the most recent year, and compared to the previous year,
or
sort of
even
the whole
2019 versus 1961 to see how much it's grown, right? Yeah.
Yeah, that would be interesting to look at.
Yeah.
With packed bubbles, I guess I'm just kind of struggling to understand what it's showing. I guess. What about you?
Yeah, so it talks about the production, and then it says, if the whole world is 100%, then each continent, so this should be continent, shares. Okay, so Asia, so I love the bit on the right. I wouldn't do it as packed bubbles because there's no explanation of the colors and the sizes, like what's actually in there. Oh, okay, so the color 1961 is in the middle. Why? Like this makes no sense. I would have expected these are the different crops, not the different years. What is it even? No. So this, I think, because like when I hover, oh, okay. So every bubble is a crop for a year for an area.
Oh, okay.
That's really complicated. Yeah.
It looks pretty.
It does. I agree. I would suggest like the big bubble on the left, I don't really get any value from. The stuff on the right is cool, but probably best to just, maybe just a circle even. They're not great for this type of analysis, but at least it's simpler because, again, this still assumes that we're summing up all the different crops over all the different years. Yeah, which I'm struggling with. Because the key thing are the numbers under the continent or under the regions, right? Asia contributed 47%, and I would adjust this number to be reflecting a single year. But yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. I actually have a question for the audience because Kevin, we commented about Grammarly, and I've always wondered. So Grammarly is a free plugin, but doesn't it just read literally everything you write? And that's maybe fine if you just do like a Tableau public viz that you publish anyway. But I'm thinking if Grammarly reads all of my emails, all of my messages, all of my blog content, or stuff I'm drafting, like, is that how it works? Because how else can it do it? And are people okay with that? Because that's the one thing where I'm like, I'm never going to sign up to that because I'm not giving away all that information. But maybe Kevin knows how it works. So maybe, Kevin, you can tell us. And my first impression of this next verse by Goris is this is really cool because I'd never thought of doing it that way, and the colors, and it's like really engaging, but I'm also trying to wrap my head around it. What's your thinking here, Priya?
It does look very cool. I missed a lot of these videos. I didn't see them, so you picked some very good examples. But yeah, I'm trying to get my head around it too. I appreciate the how to read section, so I'm just going to read that now.
Yeah. So it says the bar represents total production per continent. So this is just 2019. So that's good because we're just looking at a single year.
Yeah.
Each bubble is a specific crop. The top crop is annotated. Hover over the bubble for details. Okay. And I'm guessing... So what I don't understand is what's the sort order for the bubbles? It's not alphabetical. It's not by size. Is it just random? I'm guessing. If you had the biggest one at the top, then all of the labeling would be at the top. So that would probably make it a bit messy looking. I like how the annotations are spread out. Yeah. But also, the only bar that looks real, like proper to me, is the green one, because the other ones, the bubbles go outside the bar because they're all in a single line, then, or a single column. They're not going sideways, so they can't all fit in the bar. But that is confusing because it says in the Americas they had 1,000 million, so 1 billion tons of sugarcane production, but then the total production of all the crops is 2.86 billion, and that's smaller than the 1 billion because that's just a random, I guess. So what do you think of that?
Yeah, so I think this is an interesting of showing it. It's just the bubbles are a bit confusing for me, like you said, because like you said, the green one, the green bar and the bubbles inside of that kind of fits, but yeah, I'm not sure about the bubbles, but I like the idea of it. Should they be sorted, or would that mess up the annotations? Yeah, I'm not really sure.
I wonder what this would look like if it was horizontal, because I can't really read the vertical writing, so the country and then the summary. I like the formatting of it, but I would rotate the whole thing. And then I wonder if the bubbles were randomly spread like they are now, but also horizontally so that they all fit in the bar. I think it would look more logical, because the fact that the bubbles all go to the top makes me think there's some sort of y-axis for the bubbles, but the y-axis only exists for the, or a true y-axis is only for the bar, right? Because you can compare those. So they're all on the same axis, but the bubbles go beyond them, and that's what throws me off here. So I think I would try what it looks like with all the bubbles fitting into the bar. Oh my god, this is a lot to explain.
But it's really interesting. There's lots of unique visits this week, so that's very cool to see.
Yeah. I like the idea. There's one, so the European bubble, wheat, that needs to be moved a bit because there's some text behind it, which I can't, like the annotations overlap. So maybe having one further below and one above. Yeah, and then maybe sorting them. I mean, they're currently sorted alphabetically, which is fine. Maybe sorting them in descending order of total production would also be an idea. But I really like the approach. I think it's interesting because it shows like the total, but also just, I mean, the bubbles are not for accuracy. They're more to appreciate just how many things each region grows, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really liked it. Yeah. I'm excited to see the edits.
Yes, me too. So then we have Juanchi. You know, this would be great if people were able to switch on their voice and just kind of pronounce their name for us so we can do it properly. It's actually something in my new job where people, the first thing they ask me, they're like, is it Eva or Ava or something else? And, you know, people just ask, so that's nice. And I wish we could ask people to pronounce their names for us. Okay. So, what's the biggest producing cash crop in America? This is from, Huanchi. I'm going to go with that pronunciation. And the first question I want to ask you is about the colors, the color choice here. And what do you think of that?
Honestly, when I first looked at it, it reminded me of like a mountain.
Yes, and going skiing maybe?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
The color choices are very interesting. It's interesting that potatoes is red.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think kind of like how we talked about earlier with this kind of area chart, it's kind of tricky to compare them all because the shapes are influencing each other. Is that right? So maybe just... I wonder as well, are these just the top ones again, which is why these ones were chosen, like sugarcane and maize? Is at the top.
So it says there are 5 products that stand out from the rest. Which
it'd be good to know why.
Mm-hmm. I mean, maybe potatoes, because they never really grew. I mean, they are pretty flatlining. The other ones have gone up. Yeah. Can I just say that potatoes, I think, are the most amazing food on the planet?
I agree.
They
can
are
be eaten
honestly
in so many different ways.
if I could only ever eat one food for the rest of my life, it would be potatoes. They are just
I agree.
amazing. I would probably eat a lot of like French fries because I really
Me
love.
too.
Oh my god, so good.
I love mashed potatoes
Me
too,
too.
though. They're very comforting.
Oh, I should have. Oh, I think that's gonna be our dinner tomorrow: mashed potatoes with
I had
some
it yesterday.
vegan sausages. Yum. Anyway, potatoes. On the left side, so the y-axis, I would suggest getting rid of the decimal points because you don't need
Yep.
them on the axis. I think for when you go into millions and billions, they're definitely good to have in your annotations or tooltips because they do make a difference. You know, if whether you have 1.1 million or 1.9 million dollars is a big difference, but in the axis you don't really need it.
Yeah.
And yes, I also think that the colors, I mean, they look good together, but they don't at all make me think of food. They make me think of mountains and lakes, and you know, like they look great maybe as color combinations for a ski outfit. So maybe just something to consider there. Okay. I'd love to. Okay, so other people also really like potatoes by the looks of it. Kimberly said, I can't tell if it's stacked or not. They're not stacked, so that area chart was not stacked. They were all basically starting at 0, which also, you know, kind of hides a lot of the data. Kevin would choose sweet potatoes over potatoes. I love sweet potatoes, and maybe I would give myself permission to have sweet and normal potatoes. As a gift to the world from the Americas. They're so colorful and nutritious. Yes, they are actually really amazing. Maybe we could, maybe people could on Twitter like share their favorite potato recipe for everyone else to partake in.
Please do.
Yeah. So then we have Azad Giovanni's Viz, and Azad participates a lot in Makeover Monday. And normally I would kind of skip the Viz in favor of someone else who maybe hasn't had so many reviews yet. But I thought, I don't understand this, and that's why I want to review it. Because maybe you understand it, Priya.
So, first of all, I like how the color scheme looks like money because it's cash crops.
Yeah.
So that's interesting. Like there's like gold coins kind of falling down, but I didn't see this viz again, so I'm just kind of exploring it now. So it says sugarcane at the bottom.
Yes, so I think sugarcane is highlighted. Okay. So it highlights the largest produced cash crop in Asia, and then if I change it to Africa, it would probably change the text. And the largest, which will probably be, was it maize? I think no, cassava. Yeah.
Ah.
Okay, so that changes, which is great. Now, what are the other ones?
Europe is wheat.
Yes. Oh, us Europeans, we love our bread. Bread is glorious. Now, I'm just changing it to Europe because I'm thinking. So what I don't see is what the bubbles are. There are no tooltips.
There's no tooltip.
There's no tooltips, or maybe it's covered by like some sort of image for the color. So I don't know. I'm guessing every vertical line is a year. And these are probably the different crops. So I think it looks really cool, but I don't understand what it shows me aside from what's described in one sentence. So the, wheat, for example, for Europe. And I can't understand the others because I can't get to the data. I can't look at tooltips. And my guess would be, so for Europe now, it has wheat over time, and that each bubble is also for the year the highest or the largest crop. But then why are they further up and further down? So I think it needs a bit more explanation because it's not intuitive. And I find the darker font color really hard to read.
Yeah, I think similar to the other viz that we saw, it's probably just not ordered. The bubbles are just kind of random, like the other one. But yeah, I really like how it looks. I just would like the tooltips just so I can understand it more. But I think you're right that every line is kind of a year and the crops are highlighted.
Yeah. Okay. It looks cool, but yeah, just hard to understand. Then we have Anastasia, and we have a sankey chart. I've never created a sankey. I haven't either. I would love to do it, but then I'm like, I don't know why I would, because I haven't found a data set yet where I'm like, oh, this would be perfect for a sankey. I can typically resolve it with something else, maybe a slope chart. But let's have a look what Anastasia created. The world's crops in 2019, so that's good to know that it's just for a single year. It tells us what the total, so I think the total amount of crops across all the regions for a single year, that's fine, because that basically tells us, kind of food production or part of it. Used how much land, that's interesting as well. It would be great if that was related to something. So I don't know what 2.8 billion hectares looks like, but if you tell me that's like, I don't know, a tenth of the Earth's surface or 1% of the Earth, like something like that would be really helpful to see how big is that, I think.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So we're looking at most produced, and it tells us, so why is there so much space? I thought the sankey always fills up in terms of the bars or the lines going from the left to the right. There's a lot of white space here. Is that how it's supposed to be?
I don't know. I think I usually just see it fill up the space as well. So yeah. I'm not sure.
Okay, so maybe something for Anastasia to look at. I think it looks neater when, so we've got Asia is 50%. Okay, so there's some funky tooltips going on, but the 4 lines coming out of Asia should completely fill up that side that says Asia. Maybe something to look at there. I guess my challenge with the sankey charts, and this is not Anastasia's fault, this is just the chart itself, or the chart type, is I have a lot of following lines to do, which is, something that's not trivial, to follow a line to see it where it goes. It feels like a lot of work for me to know how much cereals was produced in Oceania, for example, in a year. So that's my reservation about these charts.
Yeah, it's really good to see the flow of things, but and it's really good that she did a sankey. I've never done one. I don't know how difficult they are to make, but I think it's the chart choice. Maybe just a bar chart would even suffice instead.
Yeah. And because you could have a bar chart that says, okay, how many, like most planted, you could divide it up. You could have I don't know, the top 5 or top 4, whichever, for all the different regions, and have different sections for that or something like that. Okay. All right. But great to, practice building different types of charts. I think that's always handy to do.
Definitely, yeah.
And then we have Tim Beard, and he has not given us a link. So we're going to just click on the picture. Okay, so you can use additional data if you want. It's not a problem. I don't care or I don't mind. I just want people to know it's not an expectation. You don't have to do any more than take the data and build a viz. Your thoughts on this one, Priya?
Yeah, so I always find it very difficult to incorporate images. So I think it's interesting that he experimented with that. I think sometimes it might be a bit kind of too distracting. So I tend to kind of make it more transparent in a way when I'm doing image things. But in terms of the charts, so is there supplementary? Yeah, there is supplementary data. That's really cool to kind of see that. I don't think I've seen anyone else use supplementary data. Have you?
Not that I've noticed. Admittedly, I have been quite busy this week. I haven't looked at a lot of vizzes until today. But if you have the time and you want to do it, it can definitely make for a richer story, right? Or find some new insights. So yeah. So what I would like is to get rid of the background image so I can actually see the rest, because I find it quite hard to read the text because of the busyness of the picture that is kind of, through the transparency that's visible.
Yeah, I think all we need are the charts themselves, and I think it would look good just to have the charts by themselves without any background image. But yeah, I do appreciate the supplementary data though. I think that's very interesting. The story, there's like an obvious story in this viz, I think.
Yeah, definitely. Okay. Now let me jump back to our collection, and there was a suggestion I actually want to get to from Dan Barilaro. It would be interesting in general if for one of you to have reviewed these ahead of time and the other for the first time live. I don't know if you'll get much different opinions. I don't know what your thoughts are, Priya, but if you had, let's say, spent an extra hour, which I wouldn't ask you to do, but if you did, looking at all of these ahead of time, would your opinion be very different, or your comments?
I think, knowing me, I usually take notes.
Yeah.
But I feel like my comments would be the same. It's just quicker for me to say them because I'm not working it out on the spot.
Yeah. And so, Dan, just for your knowledge, in case you don't know, we just wouldn't, because the only commitment I make of a Monday in terms of time is what I know I can maintain. This is my 5th year, and the only way I can maintain what I do for the community is by doing a reasonable level of engagement, because this is outside of my day job. So it's basically my personal time that I then can't spend with Andy or with the dog or doing my own thing. So I'm committed to do this hour on Wednesdays, and I want to continue doing that. If I do more, it's probably more ad hoc, but I can't commit to spending an extra hour every week previewing these things, because I also then do the favorites at the end of the week. And that's the reason why we probably wouldn't do it. I like your suggestion, but it's probably not going to be a regular feature because it's just taking too much time out of my personal life. And I wouldn't want to ask, my guests who come on to also spend the additional time. But trust us that we will give our full feedback as much as possible on these vizzes. Okay, so this viz is from Schubert. I don't know if we have a first name. Oh, I think Schubert is the first name. Interesting. In Germany, Schubert is a last name. Okay, so we have, what do we have here? We have the yield in 2019 on the y-axis and the area under cultivation. Okay, so I guess this is the efficiency, right? Is that what we're looking at? These 150 plus crops together only just managed to beat the production total of the top 4 global crops, production crops. So what are the top 4? So these are the less common crops. So I think I understand it as there are 150 crops in this viz, and if you take all of those together, they are just what did I do? Oh, you can click on something. Okay, so if you click on the viz.
Oh, cool! I didn't see that.
Oh, not all crops are made equal. Okay, so this viz. Yield refers to the amount of crop you fruit. Higher yielding crops require less land to meet the same demands. Yep. Sugarcane has the highest production amounts. Okay. Now, view. Click to get a better view of the bottom. I see. Okay, so we have the really like the top crops first, and then when we click, it zooms in. Oh, this is clever. You know what I would love?
Cool.
I'm just gonna zoom out a bit because I think it's easier to get the impression when you see it all on one page, and because I'm on a laptop screen, I couldn't see it all on one screen. So Schubert says you're on the second page. Yes, that was the link. Sorry. But I love it. I think this is so clever. What do you think?
Yeah, I love it too, especially when we unlock the interactivity.
Yes.
It was just like a surprise.
Yes. Especially how it kind of like, when I go from the top crops, so I'm looking at sugarcane at the moment, and I click and sugarcane kind of just explodes off the page. So
It's very nifty. I like it a lot.
It's very clever. One suggestion I would make is that on the first page, I know there's a lot of space. I think it's a bit much text for me to take in because I'm someone, I will click randomly. So I clicked, but I hadn't read all the text, and then I had to kind of go back and, okay, either pace yourself and kind of, read it first. So maybe there could be a bit of a simple statement of, this is what you're going to see, and then I'll kind of digest the text. But I think this is really clever, and I agree with Kevin that this is brilliant.
Awesome. I really like that.
Cool. Okay. We've got about 15 minutes. Oh, no. Oh, I have to go back quickly to this. Here we go. Okay. We can make it. We've got 3 more visits. We've got Palak. I'm starting to notice myself getting hungry for dinner. It's a bit early, but it's okay.
This is about food.
I know.
It must make you hungry.
It makes me hungry. Okay. Why don't I let you go first on this viz by Palak?
Yep, so I like how there's a toggle between area harvested, production, and yield, and you can compare all the different areas of the world and the world as well. And it looks like the top for each area is in red. Maybe putting that in the subtitle somewhere so that we know why that's highlighted would help, I think. I guess the only thing is, I really like how it's just very simple and neat. It's just because so many are so low down, they're kind of all clustered together and overlapping lines. And so it's kind of, you can't really see them. It'd be good if you could have a zoom in action like we just had in the previous viz. What do you think?
So I actually think area harvested, I would probably push to the far right. I would start with production or yield because they are much more interesting. When you look at production, the Earth has limited resources, and I'm sure that more areas were used for production. So we have grown because the population has grown, so we need to grow more food. But I think it also tells a story of we've become more efficient in growing food. Now, it might not always be a good thing of how that's done, but we have managed to grow more food on the same amount of space. So I think production and yield are more interesting charts to start on. And then having the area harvested be the third tab because it just visually doesn't draw me in as much because the lines are, kind of fairly flat and they just doesn't, there's just not really much going on. Now, the charts, because, they're quite narrow, the different panes in the view, so world, America, etc. I like that I have the world to compare things to, so that's great. I would get rid of the decimal points on the axis, but the charts are really narrow and steep, so it might look a bit exaggerated. It might look more dramatic than it actually is.
Yeah. So maybe making them wider? Do you think that would help, or?
Yes. Which makes the whole viz a bit wider, or instead just not making them as tall, so just squishing it vertically. And maybe some of those low, maybe you just focus on the top ones so that you only have a few lines. You don't need to have all the ones at the bottom potentially. Okay,
maybe top 5 or 3 or
something like that. Okay, then we have Regine. So Dimitri said, if you're doing a food viz review before your local tea time, make sure your dinner is prepared and ready to devour. Easier said than done because until viz review I was working, and I will do a bit more work after viz review, so there is no dinner prepared and ready to be devoured, but there's always snacks. I just have to make sure that if I get carrot sticks for a snack, I have to share them with the dog, because as soon as she hears me cutting carrots or saying the word carrot, she's totally triggered and she will expect some. She's quite funny. Okay, so why can I not? This is so weird when I go into full screen. Sometimes I can't zoom. Okay, so this viz, this is annoying, is by Regine. Sorry, we said that earlier. And I don't know why I can't use the scroll bar, but here we are. First thing I notice is the icons, and I'm normally not a fan, but I think these work because they're all very similar in style, and the colors work, and it's just kind of harmonious looking, I guess.
Yeah, I was going to say they're very consistent. They look like they belong on the viz. It all kind of meshes well together. It looks very neat. So yeah, I like the icons as well.
Yeah. The top right one is a different green than all the rest, so I would probably change that color there.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. But yeah, I like how it's like a ranking. So we can see the top ones for each of the different things, so that's good. And then at the bottom we have some, I like again how the top ones are kind of highlighted in green, so you can clearly see them. Yeah, it looks very neat. How do you feel about grid lines?
I don't necessarily need them. Plus, again, those charts are really tall. They don't need to be, because if you make them square, they will not take up so much space, and the whole dashboard is a bit more compact.
Yeah.
So
just remove the grid lines and just make it less tall.
Yeah. Okay.
Maybe the transparency of the
bubbles, the circles. Yeah, I think that's a good idea, so that you can see a bit more how many are actually underneath.
Yeah. But yeah, I like this viz. It's very neat and clean.
Yeah, agreed. Okay, and last but not least is Fatima? How would you pronounce that name? I know how I would say it in German, but it's probably not right.
Fatima, I think.
Fatima, yeah. Okay, and we'll zoom in. And I thought this was interesting.
Yeah, I saw this one. It took me a second to kind of wrap my head around it, but the description at the top basically explains it.
Yeah.
Well.
So we have a ranking, and there's one big suggestion I would make, because there's more. So this is a great example of the Gestalt principles of visual perception. Because the gap between the different columns, between the different regions, is bigger than the gap between the rows, you think that each column is what you should be looking at. And you can look at the columns, but then the big numbers don't make sense, because it's 1, 2, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1. So yeah, so the grouping should be horizontal, because it always goes 1 through to 5 for each of the different crops. So the gap between the columns needs to be narrower, and between the rows needs to be wider, so that your brain perceives the rows to be one unit rather than the columns to be a unit. Does it make sense?
Yeah, I was viewing it as columns as well. Yeah, that does make sense.
Yeah. I really like the idea of having these different cards, and they're nice and simple. They have, I don't know what so it's got millions of tons produced, and then percentage of total per crop group. So I think that's really cool. It's a very different approach, and I think it works.
Yeah, it reminds me of a periodic table in a way.
It does.
It's really cool. How about just making the numbers a bit bigger?
The 1 through to 5?
More. The actual figures.
Yeah.
To make them stand out. But yeah, it looks really nice, and it's a very interesting way of showing the data.
Definitely. Yeah, I like it. Cool. With that, I'm going to bring us back. And here we are. And I think there's a way to make this full screen. There we go. Okay. So everybody, as you can see, we're getting longer and longer daylight hours here in the UK, because we don't have, funky lighting going on now. Thank you for joining me again, Priya. Really appreciate it.
It was fun.
This was fun. The topic was nice and light. Nothing difficult, nothing sad or political. So that's really refreshing.
And it made us hungry as well.
It did, just in time for dinner. And I hope that everyone got, some good value out of the feedback that we gave. And we look forward to seeing your iterations come through during the week. And then, it's the usual. Favorites on Friday, new data set on Sunday.
Yay, I'm excited.
Cool. So without further ado, we'll just disappear into our Wednesday evenings. Wish everyone a good rest of the day. And I need to I need to figure out how to do an elegant closing out because I have to switch windows and press the stop button. But anyway, sorry, one last question from the audience. Is there a book or blog people might recommend about Gestalt design principles? I think just Google it. There's lots of good explanations out there. And that's it. So thanks, Priya. And
Bye.
see everyone soon. Bye-bye.
Bye.